Number 1, opening prayer and statements of acknowledgement. Almighty God, we pray for your blessings upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Manningham Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners of the land and waterways now known as Manningham. Council pays respects to elders past, present and emerging, and values the ongoing contribution to enrich and appreciate the cultural heritage of Manningham. Council acknowledges and respects Australia's First Peoples as the traditional owners of the lands and waterways across country and encourages reconciliation between all. Manningham Council also values the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I welcome all members of the public who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's meeting. I would like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and/or image is broadcasted by Council. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and reading the title. Then I will call for a mover and seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I would like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda, public question time, which provides people with the opportunity to ask a question of Council. Council has allocated 30 minutes for question time at tonight's meeting, and the process for public question time is set out in our governance rules. Questions must be received prior to the start of the meeting to be asked. Where we receive advance notice of a question in accordance with our governance rules, we will provide a verbal response to the question at our meeting. Questions received up until 7 p.m. may be taken on notice if we don't have the information on hand to provide a meaningful response. If this happens, you will be provided with a written response to your question within 10 working days. I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. You will be asked to come forward to the lectern and to ask your question, where you will have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute introductory statement before asking your question. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to Council through our normal channels. To ensure the efficient conduct of our meeting and maximum participation during question time, all questions and answers shall be brief as possible, and no discussion is permitted on any question. Councillors and the gallery are reminded that our question time is to be conducted in a respectful manner, and that any disorderly conduct will be managed in accordance with our governance rules. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. I will confirm Councillor Thomas Lightbody's virtual attendance. Councillor Lightbody, can you please confirm that you can see and hear me?
Yes, I can see and hear you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are no other apologies this evening. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? Thank you. Item 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. No prior notifications of conflict of interest have been received. Would anyone like to give notice of a conflict of interest? Thank you. And item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Chen.
Well, Madam Mayor, I move that the minutes of council meeting held on 31st of October 2023 and the annual council meeting on the 2nd of November 2023 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Laura Main, would you like to speak to the motion? Are there any other speakers to the motion? If that's no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5, presentations. There are no presentations. Item 6, petitions. Item 6.1, petition Aqua Arena Centre, Lower Templestowe.
Madam Mayor, this petition is non-compliant and not in accordance with our governance rule sub-rule 58.1D. Considering the nature of the petition, I would like to make an exception and have the petition tabled nonetheless.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for the petition?
Mayor, I move that the petition with 219 signatories requesting council to ensure the Aqua Arena amenities are cleaned on a regular basis for the safety of our children, our elderly parents and general community be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Do I have a seconder of the motion? Thank you, Councillor Main. Do you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Connellan, do you want to speak to the motion? If that's the case, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you, and that's received unanimously. Item 7, public question time. Are there any questions from the public?
Madam Mayor, we have no questions from the public this evening.
Thank you. Item 8, omission of urgent business. There is no items of urgent business. Item 9, planning permit applications. There are no planning permit applications that require decision of council this month. Item 10, city planning. There are no city planning reports. Item 11, connected communities. 11.1, Neighbourhood House Grants 2024 and 25. Do I have a mover? Councillor Goff?
I move as on the paper, as the council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor De Monte. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much. And I move this motion of a funding process for the future for the neighbourhood houses in our municipality. We have quite a number of them. I suppose the Pines Living and Learning is probably the biggest one, but basically these houses have been operating throughout Victoria for quite a number of years. They were started really in the 70s and 80s and have been running in particular locations, catering, I suppose, from its original use as a neighbourhood house, as a drop-in centre and a refuge for women, has extended into a whole lot of other different programs, and the Living and Learning at Pines is one of those places that has extended into a whole lot of other programs as well. So over the years, these programs have morphed, but council considers them an important part of our function at Manningham and working with us often on programs that work in coordination with council on council issues. So in many ways, in the past, there has been competition with our community grants program for funding of these particular neighbourhood houses. And so therefore, last year or earlier this year, we actually looked at not including them in that program, but swapping them to a program of their own where they would be getting the funding for each year. And we're looking forward in this proposal to map out the next few years of the funding for the neighbourhood houses within our area. And I suppose it is very important for surety, and it also separates that funding that we're taking away from other programs that we've funded for the community grants program. So this means that they no longer have to go into that competition, which is a great thing for the houses, having some sort of surety into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Gough. Councillor Diamonte, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I remember it was almost this time last year, Madam Mayor, where we talked about a new grants policy that included the grant for the neighbourhood houses, and it was a really important policy for us because these neighbourhood houses operating from Lower Templestowe right through to Wonga Park do provide very important training programs and wellbeing programs and outreach programs to all manners of people within our community. So they are very important community organisations, and I'm very pleased that we have this grant to fund, not, as Councillor Gough said, to fund not just programs that they're delivering within their own community house, but to have the additional grant funding for them to collaborate. And I think that's really wonderful because many in our community don't know suburban boundaries, and so where our community houses can collaborate, then we're going to amplify these benefits for the community. So I think it's really wonderful. I'm really proud that we have this policy in place. I'm very supportive of the funding for all of the community houses and also for the collaborative funding, and I'm looking forward to seeing the outcomes of the programs that are funded through the grant. So very much support this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Diamonte. Are there any speakers against the motion?
I'd like to propose an amendment to the mover and the seconder, which would to add point C to the recommendation, and it would be as follows: provide an additional $10,000 in untied funding to each community house in calendar 2025 to reflect CPI changes since 2016.
Councillor Gough, do you accept the amendment?
No, Madam.
If that's the case.
Look for a seconder.
I'll second the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. So then Councillor Main. Yep, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, so Councillor, this is a very modest amendment. So our community housing in the last council averaged around the $300,000 a year in the 4 years to 2020. As you know, when we had the competition with the community grants process, it temporarily was cut by 40% to $170,000 in one particular year. There was then an intervention from councillors and support for a top-up payment. We agreed to carve it out of the competitive community grants program to have its own bespoke targeted funding program. And tonight is the report. And I think it's a good report, proposing $50,000 in individual funding and $10,000 collectively. This is just a modest $10,000 top-up in the second year, calendar 2025, to reflect inflation. Because when we were giving them $300,000 back in 2016, inflation's been 17% since then. Our neighbours, like Burundara, give their community houses $100,000 a year. So we're well behind them with this proposal at $60,000. So this is a modest amendment to go with the $60,000 this year and to spend a very small $50,000 in calendar 2025 just to reflect inflation. Because most funding grants, our salaries, normally you have a CPI escalator. Our library funding, financial assistance grants, it is quite unusual to go with a 60 flat in funding. So effectively, this is just building in an inflation inflator into the second year. At $50,000, it's very modest. And I just ask that the councillors support this modest amendment because we know that our community houses have been struggling. The one in my ward, Pines, Living and Learning at Ajani, had a $100,000 loss, had to lose one of their staff members. We've got $90 million in the bank. As we see later on tonight, we're $4 million ahead of budget in terms of our first quarter report. So at 50,000, this is a very modest amendment, just to allow our community house funding to keep up with inflation since 2016, so we haven't gone backwards in real terms over the last 8 years.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Lightbody, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there anyone that would like to speak to against the motion? Councillor Damonte?
So I'm not against the idea of reviewing our policy to look at funding and to include a CPI escalator. But tonight we're here to talk about approving the awarding of grant funding against our policy and to ensure that the programs themselves align with our policy and the outcomes of that policy. To talk about additional funding which is untied is not in accordance with the untied part, is not necessarily in accordance with our policy, Madam Mayor. So I would suggest that this is a discussion that councillors have separately linked to our budget process, and then if need be, update our community grants policy rather than moving an amendment to this motion. So I don't support the amendment.
Are there any speakers for the motion? Are there any further speakers against the motion? Thank you, councillors. Well, then time is up. So I will ask for a vote. So those in this is on the amendment only. So those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Councillor Stephen Mayne, Councillor Laura Mayne and Councillor Thomas Lightbody. And those against the amended motion, the amendment, that's Councillor Michelle Kleinert, Councillor Carly Lang, Councillor Jeff Goff, Councillor Deirdre Diamonte, Councillor Andrew Connellan and Councillor Anna Chen. Therefore, the amendment is not carried, so we will go back to the substantive motion. We already heard from our mover and seconder, so do I have, I've asked for speakers against the motion and we had an amendment, so are there any speakers to the substantive motion in favour of the substantive motion before us? Are there any speakers to the motion? If that's the case, I'll put the substantive motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 11.2, White Horse Manningham Library's annual report. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Michelle Kleinert.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the annual report, which was actually passed by the White Horse Manningham Library Corporation Board, of which myself and Councillor Mayne sit on. We have 8 libraries in our region that we share with White Horse, and thanks to Councillor Stephen Mayne, this report, library report, actually now comes to council each year, so our community can see the good work of libraries. When people ask where do my rates go to, they go to over 100 services, of which the libraries are one. And there are some really great achievements in this last year. My favourite, I have to say, is the thanks again to Councillor Mayne for the extended hours at Doncaster Library, which has been very successful, opening Sundays and also at the Pines, extending the hours there. Wonderful that Warrandyte was received funding, that now you can have an induction, a special induction, to have a card to access Warrandyte Library before and after its normal opening hours, which extends that opportunity for people who perhaps want to work or study or want that quiet time. and that's been a huge success. Our memberships in the last year have been an increase of 31%. Our libraries are one of the most visited libraries in the state, our regional libraries. And there is so much to really celebrate. The removal of overdue charges, therefore encouraging the return of materials. You wouldn't think so, would you? But it does, because when someone goes overdue on a book, then they're scared to bring it back because then they've got to pay a fee, so they never bring it back. You lose those books. But it is a good news story. There are so many wonderful programs that the library do provide for our community, and I'd like to acknowledge the CEO of the libraries and the staff, Sally both, and the staff for the hard work that they've trekked in the recovery after COVID. It hasn't been easy. It's been very difficult, and like with all industries, as coming back after COVID, there's always a sea change. So there has been a turnover of staff, but certainly from a library perspective, every time you go, it's buzzing. Students love it. It's a place where people go to learn, to read. The children's programs are amazing. The connection programs are unbelievable, and it's just a wonderful report. I'm proud to have been on the board for the last 3 years with my fellow councillor, and I think it really functions well. That partnership with Whitehorse, as it stands currently today, is a successful one, and that's by the way people keep coming back to the library. So this is a report. Really, it's a good news story, and it's always highlights, those quiet services that people do forget about, but they are very important. State funding is very hard. We fund, just over 86%. Thank you, Councillor Goff. That's a huge amount. And when someone says, "But I don't use the libraries," well, that's fair enough. But there's millions of visitations every year, so there are a lot of people using the service. So it's good use of rate money. So that being said, I hope that we all endorse the adopted document.
Thank you, Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think Councillor Kleiner has summarised it well. It's been a good year at the library. Some of the other high-level facts, that the library visits jumped from the COVID-affected 529,000 in 21-22 back up to 975,000 visits for the year. It's good that we've been investing in our collection. So the collection items have jumped from 407,000 to 421,000. Total loans over the year was up from 2.36 million to 2.9 million. And the web catalogue searches was at 4.76 million, which was actually slightly down for the year by 8%. And the total membership was also slightly down, 6%, down to 97,507. But for two councils with around the 300,000, to have a third of them as members of the library is a phenomenal level of penetration with the community. I agree with Councillor Kleiner. It's been terrific. We've gone the extended hours at the Pines and Doncaster. We have signed a new 10-year lease with the owners of the Pines. And the Warrandyte extended hours has lifted the hours from 24 hours a week to 98 hours a week, which is, fantastic utilisation. And we're now into the hundreds of people who've gone through effectively the probity test, that they can be trusted in the facility without any staff. I'm actually coming off the library board, as we'll deal with the committees later on, and I just want to thank Councillor Kleinert for her leadership in the first year, and Councillor Skilbeck, also from Whitehorse, who's chaired it, for much of the period of this council term. In terms of other material facts, we did, it took 2 or 3 years, but we did reach an enterprise agreement with the staff. We do have 125 staff, or about 75 full-time equivalent. It was a couple of years late, the EA, but we did get there in the end. The cash balance is up from 2.7 to 3.7, so it's prudently funded. The councils together give about 10 million a year, and the state roughly 2, which is usually indexed to inflation. And I'd like to echo the thanks to Sally Both, the CEO. The management team's been very stable over the last 3 years, and they're very competent. And I'm very happy with the marriage and the competence and the operations and the performance of the library. Under the state legislation, we do have to collapse the current sort of corporate joint venture structure and decide whether we want to go our own way or merge with someone else. We haven't sort of formally dissolved the structure that must die by 2031. That will be probably for the next council. But I personally think that the Whitehorse marriage has served both communities well, and I hope it continues long into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Did anyone want to speak against the motion? No other speakers for the motion? And I will put that to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, I'll just pause for the formal proceedings for a moment just to let you know that there is a function upstairs. So if you do hear children or see them running around, it's of no need to be concerned. Thank you. Back to formal proceedings. Item 12, City Services. 12.1, Procurement of Major Road and Civil Contract. Do I have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Day-Monte.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Jeff Goff. Councillor Day-Monte, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I want to thank the officers for their thinking on this. It's a really clever model. We've got a number of road and civil construction projects which have been in planning and design for several years and now reaching their delivery phase, which means that procurement activities are ready to commence. And these projects are typically higher in value, public-facing, so they come with some reputational risk, complex civil design contracts, and Council's not alone in saying, in talking about the difficulties in market response and market certainty, addressing risk and also cost certainties. So to address some of those risks, officers are recommending that we have a bundled contract approach as our procurement strategy, which is a really clever model of not just awarding a panel, but at the same time awarding initial packages of work, and then subsequent to that, future packages of work can be awarded based on value for money and expertise and performance, and I really do applaud this approach. It's a really clever way of addressing those market risks, market certainty, packaging work so it's more attractive, getting early buy-in around terms and conditions and cost management and performance, and it also quite rightly puts a focus on performance management and expertise and also value for money. So I really applaud the officers' thinking about this model and very much support this item.
Thank you. Do I have the seconder for the motion? Councillor Goff, did you want to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, Madam Mayor. Look, again, I'd like to also congratulate the office for coming up with a structure of being able to get things done. We had a problem here in Manningham, and the problem was that we've increased our capital works budget substantially in the last few years, and to such an extent that we're having lots of carryover projects, and that's why when you read an annual report you'll often find that there's a lot more money than we actually have, because the payments for some capital works haven't actually been carried out in that financial year and they're carried over to the next, and we're carrying on very high amounts, the highest amounts in the last few years than we've ever done in capital works. That, along with, there are major issues of supply chain issues, especially in building. Concrete's been brought up by the state government, workers, there aren't enough around. I'm not going to go into that, but the concept that we've come up with is to bundle certain like things together and put them out for contract. So they're not a very small one, but it's a competent operator. It's a larger amount, putting two or three together. So there's an economy of scale. Not to say that we've got one contractor that does everything in our, that was an option that was looked at. Not to say that we've got one person that's going to do the lot for us. Which does leave us vulnerable if they don't actually perform. But this particular method is one that's recommended here, and I do agree with what we're doing in this particular area, and to get these out and to get them tendered for and to get completed is one of the ways in which we're trying to get that speed of that 12-month budget allocation spent within that 12 months. It is very difficult. If anyone has done any building ever, as soon as you touch the ground, you find something different, and all sorts of things can come into it. But this is one way in which we are working to overcome some of the things that we've got, being able to get larger and larger, and I think the report talks about that even into the future, there are more capital works projects in amount of projects and the amount of money that are going through. So it's important that we can get this structure and let's test it out and see how it all goes. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any further speakers to the motion? If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 12.2, September 2023 Capital Works Status Report. Do I have a mover for the motion?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. And do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a report of our capital works of our whopping $77.43 million program. This includes $54.81 million for infrastructure and $22.64 million for operating projects. So far, we have spent 11.73% of it in our first quarter, and the organisation is confident that we will complete 90% of the budget and 90% of the projects within the financial year, which fulfills two of our CEO's KPIs. This includes $0.62 million carry forward from our last financial year and $0.3 million increase from the Tunstall Square kindergarten grant income. So of our 172 projects, we have 103 that are on track, which is great. 33 yet to start, 3 closed, 1 at risk, only 1, and 8 behind schedule. 14 needing additional funding and 7 that are completed already. I won't go into detail about all the 172 projects, but the report does give great detail about where they're all up to. Some highlights to include, though, the Finn Reserve Scout Hall, which is having good progress, the Park Orchards Tennis Club Court upgrade complete, and the Tunstall Square Kindergarten, as I already mentioned. So I'd like to thank the organisation for this report and all their great work that they're doing so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and again, it's unlike me, but I'm actually to congratulate the office for the way this report is presented, and it's being added on to all the time, and it is much easier and far better to read, especially when you're setting out on what programs have been funded. Like we talk about X amount of programs have been funded, but what are they? Is it a big program or not that we're waiting on? And as you go through the pages from probably about 115 to 125, 27, about 133 or whatever, you will find areas that we're looking at and how it's all going. So as a performance, we've got our buildings and our children's services programs, all of those program expenditures that we have outlined in the areas of a budget are opened up here, and actually you can see at a glance how things are going through the table and the colour-coded scheme. I do look at the graphs and sort of think to myself, we've gone for the first 3 months and we can report on what we've got, but then we've got the October, November, December quarter, which we're basically into December now, and those figures will be more updated now. And the hard challenge, I think, in any of these is we do have a month called January, and I'm not a Grinch. I think I'm not saying we shouldn't have holidays, but it's not us that's having the holidays. It's all of the people that are actually working on those working sites that are on holidays, probably till about the 18th or whatever of January. And so if into anything construction, it's very difficult to actually do anything between Christmas and at least the 10th of January. So that takes out a sizable amount of time in progress. But I'm sure that the office will be spending a lot of time preparing reports or anything that's needed to be done, so that as soon as all of those people come back, it all actually happens on the ground. So it can be used as a very useful time for officers to actually catch up on a whole lot of work and get that paper stuff and get the things organised for when it does come back. But a great report. It really gives us an idea of where we're getting through. And again, the expectation is there that we deliver the whole lot. But it is understandable, through no fault of anybody's, that sometimes the programs get paid out after, but at Manningham we don't count that money twice. We actually carry it over, so we don't, and it's there to be spent from the previous year. So we're not. One of the easiest things councils can do is not spend their capital works program and spend it on operational budget, and that's one of the first signs of a council that isn't working well. So congratulations, Manningham.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any further speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Most of it's been said. I agree that there is a challenge of getting over that September quarter traditional slow start, where we've only managed to spend $6 million of a $55 million budget, or 11.73% in 25% of the time. So obviously we'll have to get our skates on, but this is the way the local government sector goes. A lot of the action happens in the June quarter. There is a lot of great and interesting data. I'm really impressed with the transparency to the community and to the councillors on the $55 million program. For instance, it lists the transfers. So there's $5 million of transfers where the officers have transferred funding from one project to another project, and that can reflect delays, it can reflect budgets increasing. So a couple of examples from that. Deed Creek Pavilion for the baseballers has had a transfer of another $215,000, so that will end up costing close to $3 million. Everard Drive, the drainage job in Warrandyte, has had a $600,000 transfer in. You know, we've seen those huge pipes down there. It's obviously a big project, and it's proved to be a little bit more expensive than was first envisaged. One near me, the Wood Street footpath between Milne and McLaughlin was initially budgeted at $200. We've transferred another $250, so that will end up costing $450. And initially, what was meant to be a redo the cladding project on MC Squared, now it's got quite a complex redo of the electricals as well. There's a $1.5 million transfer into that job. Some projects haven't started. Well, some things are going quite well and will need some more money. I'm sure Councillor Goff will be delighted to see we spent over $1 million on drainage in the September quarter, and the report notes that even with $5 million in commitments made, there may need to be a request for transfers in for more drainage spending, which is great because we all agree we really need to step up on drainage. We are helping the state government out on a few of their services and assets. For instance, we're budgeting to spend $375,000 on new bus shelters for the state government funded and run bus programs. We haven't quite yet started on any of those. I think there's 6 that are listed, but if we get our skates on, we'll get all 5 or 6 of them done for the $375,000. And the traffic lights we're putting in for Vic roads on Tram Road at Merlin Road, helping out the state government. Initially, it was in there at $2.3 million. We've committed $358,000, and the total commitments now is listed in the report at quite a hefty $2.9 million of our ratepayers' money, putting in a set of traffic lights on a state government road. We are in a good financial position. We can afford these overs and unders. We have stepped up the annual commitment by $10 million a year in round terms, from $45 to $55 million a year. Last couple of years, we've fallen sort of in the order of $8 million short, so it is a real stretch target for the officers to deliver these record programs. And we're all looking forward to seeing a real crank up in activity over the last 9 months to see if we can get close to that $55 million in the current year.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Are there any further speakers for the motion? With that, I'll put it to the vote. For those in favour of the motion, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 13, Experience and Capability. 13.1, Manningham Quarterly Report, Quarter 1, July to September 2023 to 24. Do I have a mover for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen.
And Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Anna Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And the report tabled for noting tonight is about Council's performance for Quarter 1, July-September 2023. In regard to capital works, so as of 30th of September 2023, Council has spent nearly $6 million on infrastructure projects, which was close to about 12% of budget. And we are already committed to spend a further $25.21 million. And 7 projects were complete. They are Dominey Reserve Management Plan implementation and Blackberry Road footpath between number 8 Havelock to Anderson's Creek Road and Zerby Avenue to Chestnut Court. Also, Donvale Reserve Cricket Nest, Park Orchards Tennis Club court update, and a couple drainage works at Park Orchards. And special mentions to Rothley Park Exercise Station. We all know that Rothley Park is our beloved open space in Manningham. And we have this very special exercise station with a Ninja Warrior course for those seeking adventure and actions, and also a beautiful covered lookout deck for relaxing and gentle exercise. And moving on, all major initiatives in Council plan are on track. As to our budget and financial performance, Council's operating surplus was 4.41 million, favorable compared to the year-to-date adopted budget. The main variance was the grants, subsidies, capital grants, and contributions Council received from other levels of governments. Our statutory planning team continued to perform well, and with 93.1% of the standard string applications decided within 60 statutory days. Regarding to community engagement, our community engagement projects include Templestowe route upgrade, flooding and stormwater management, new resource hub created to support our sport and recreation clubs, and a new park on Herburn Road. Finally, I would like to touch on our CEO's KPIs. In September each year, councillors and our CEO developed an annual set of KPIs that requires our CEO's particular attention to improve community outcomes and organizational performance. The good news is, I'm very pleased to advise that all of the CI's KPIs for Q1 are on track or completed. It's a great performance from our CEO. So this is overall a very, very good quarterly report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen, for that glowing explanation. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, once again, it's the report that goes up every quarter as part of a Local Government Act that we report on these things about our finance, capital works, our governance, and as Councillor Chen has said, we're doing quite well. We're on track. 172 projects for this coming year. It's a really great report. It is very transparent in sharing with our community what we're doing. And one highlight that I just thought that is in the report, because it all reflects back to our council plan of 2021 to 25. And this is our community vision, that Manningham is a peaceful, inclusive and safe community. We celebrate life and its diverse culture, wildlife and natural environment. We are resilient and value sustainable and healthy living and a sense of belonging and respect for one another. This was the community vision put together by a whole raft of residents that came at the start of the council plan term and had this vision. Everything that we do as far as our capital works, our projects, our programs feed into making this the reality for all, because that's how we want to live our community and be part of that. We're contributing to fund the delivery of the council plan in 2023-24. It's 38 million to healthy communities. That's one of our pillars. 24 million for our livable places and spaces. And that seems a lot of the projects completed, Madam Mayor, is in your neck of the woods. So we like to see, hopefully in the next quarter, some more everywhere else. Only joking. It's all good. Now, it's important. It's important. This is all important stuff. 22 million to resilient environment, 5 million for vibrant, prosperous economy, because we love to go to our local shopping centres and have coffees and meet for lunch or dinner and walk through our parks and see others where we feel safe. And we're doing things like 4.5 million just in this year for footpaths and cycleways, another 5 million for drainage, and in that is also footpaths and roads. 10.6 million open space, streetscape. So when we go and we walk, we're seeing places that don't look tired and old and disgusting, but renewed. There's 31 million that's for a well-governed council, because it takes a lot to be well-governed. There's a lot that's in it, and that doesn't happen very easily. It's a great report. It really highlights in our final year that we're on track. You see a lot of green lights there, which says that we're on track to deliver the council plan that goes through thousands and thousands of voices ahead of the council plan being developed. What does the community want? What does the community after? We get that, we look at it, and that's how the council plan gets developed. So it's really great to see that we are on track, and we're seeing this all come through the pillars that have been developed.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. That's time.
Thank you. No, thank you. All good, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any speakers for the motion? Thank you. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I agree with Councillor Kleinert that it's very transparent that we do this on a quarterly basis. Many public companies only do their results every 6 months. And as a group of councillors, we voted to increase the detail each quarter, such as a quarterly balance sheet, a breakdown of developer contributions by property, the cash, where is the cash on deposit with which bank, those sorts of things. But interestingly, the report notes that our net assets have actually increased by almost 100 million over the quarter, from 2.7 billion to 2.8 billion. And what that is the rates receivable. So the receivables are up by 99 million. So it's come on as an asset because we've issued the rates notice, but a lot of people pay quarterly, but it is an asset because that's going to be coming in. Our cash balance is a healthy 89.4 million. I think this is the first time I can recall that we haven't had the most amount of our cash with the Commonwealth Bank. So we've got 24.8 million with the Commonwealth Bank. The Commonwealth Bank, I was about to say they closed 3 of their 5 branches in Manningham, and we should...
We'll just pause the meeting for a moment. Councillor Stephen Mayne, if yours is not moving, if you could borrow Councillor Michelle Kleinert's, that would be lovely.
All right.
Thank you,
I'll keep this one. So some other notables in there. Our wages expenditure... thank you. Our wages expenditure was 810,000 under budget. We were expecting to have spent 14.8. We've only spent 14, and that reflects the still very tight labour markets and the vacancies across various operations. Our wages footprint will fall with the biggest thing that's happened in the last 4 or 5 months is our exit from many aged care services, where the federally funded programs have been outsourced to various other not-for-profit providers, and we have reduced our in-house staff numbers by I think close to 90 as part of that exit after many years, and that's been a very well handled but a challenging exercise for all the officers and the staff involved. Our open space reserve is still a very healthy 15 million. The report notes that we received about 1 million in open space developer contributions. That's wherever there's a subdivision, we get 5% of the land value. And if you talk about the lack of supply and has the economy slowed, I mean, this is real data. So we usually used to get 6 million a year. We fell short of that the last couple of years as developers are sitting on their permits. They're not actually constructing what we say they can construct. So it's not our fault for not issuing permits. It's the developers' faults for not actually turning the sod. And in the first quarter, we received 1 million when we were expecting to get 5 million for the year. So we still are tracking below what we budgeted. So that says activity has not yet picked up in terms of new developments in Manningham. But overall, the point I was going to make on the banking was it's the first time that we've ever had more money with another bank apart from the CBA. So we've got 26.5 million with the National Australia Bank and 24.8 million with the CBA, which did close 3 of their 5 branches in Manningham during COVID. So I personally think we should take more of our money out as a penalty for that. I think that's all I've got to say, except overall, we are 4.41 million favourable to budget in the overall sense, and fair bit of that is the wages underspend I mentioned, but probably the biggest chunk of that is the cycle for capital works, is that we've only spent that $6 million on capital works in the first quarter. Hence the budget, the cash budget position is more significantly favourable to what we had projected on a year-to-date basis. Thank you.
Councillors, we'll just pause the meeting while we organise our microphones. Councillors, can you hear me?
Yep, I think everyone's back on.
Thank you. We will proceed with the meeting. Are there any further speakers for the motion? With no further speakers, I'll put that to a vote. Who would like to vote in favour of the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 14, Chief Executive Officer. 14.1, councillor committees and chairperson appointments for 2024. Do I have a mover of the motion? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Michelle Kleinert. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Yeah, I'd really like to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion? And if you can borrow that working microphone, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's actually my original mic, so I'll grab it back. We'll share. We like sharing. And that's part of the committees that are being appointed. So once a year, we go and recommit our committees that we attend, and there are multiple committees that councillors attend. Not only do we have multiple briefings to do with council and council meetings, but then we also sit on multiple committees. So this is takes effect. We're endorsing it hopefully tonight in its entirety with no changes, and it comes into effect on January 1st of this coming year. It is wonderful to see with our committees, we've got lots of new residents that it's their first touch point to councillors coming onto these committees as advisory committees and giving input, and they've done some great things in this last 12 months. So just want to say, as we endorse the councillor and chairperson appointments for the various committees and external bodies for 2024, we also say a huge thank you to every resident that sits on one of those committees. It is time. It's time to read, time to contribute. Sometimes there's subcommittees, workshops that they attend as part of that, and it's really wonderful. Also, there's a whole raft of staff behind each committee that helps us as councillors be prepared. If we chair, we have that pre-briefing to make sure that we're happy with the agenda and how we want to make the meeting the best use of time and being productive and keeping in line with the council plan ultimately. So it's really wonderful, and we often forget, though this is really just a process, but those appointments, we don't take them lightly as individuals. We sometimes fight over them because we want to experience and share a different part of Manningham, and we certainly do that when we sit on and chair in the committees. So ask that we endorse that in its entirety this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I think this is the last time we'll be doing this as a group of councillors. I can remember in my early days on council over a decade ago, it was always a mad scramble to sort out the mayoralty and the deputy mayoralty and redo all the committees in the same night before and then do it all in a big rush. So a really sensible change that we made to just make that leadership change at the statutory meeting, find out who the new mayor and deputy mayor is, and then allow that person to lead sensible, well-organised, not rushed review of the committees. I'd like to thank you, Madam Mayor, for how you've conducted it yourself. I think it's been done very well in all three handover years so far on this council. We haven't had divisive votes or people getting forced off things they don't want to go on. I think the way this has been conducted has reflected the tenor of the whole term, which has been sensible, respectful, collaborative discussions and agreements and sharing of the workload. So I will be coming off the library board, as I mentioned earlier. I'm looking forward to wish Councillor Conlon the best of luck in joining that. It's a very important board with its 125 staff and 12 million a year in revenues. It's a big operation. I've really enjoyed serving it, and I feel it's in great hands from everything I've seen. Really happy with how the Sport and Rec Committee, or the Rec and Sport Committee, has gone. We started that one about in the last year, I think it was, and with our 15 community members, and I think it's gone really well. Looking forward to Councillor Diamante joining the Audit Committee. I think your skills in governance and audit and procurement will be really well suited there. Personally, the only change I would love to see at some point would be that we move away from all councillors on the CEO committee, CEO performance committee, and that we would move to a more normal, smaller committee, ideally with an independent chair. We've been talking about it. Maybe we'll get there one day, but for now, in this report, we're voting all of ourselves back onto the CEO committee, so the CEO will have another excellent time in 9 months herding cats as we all review his performance in a very large committee. But overall, it's been a very well handled process. As I said, thank you, Mayor, for that, and good luck to everyone serving on their various committees in the next 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Laura Mayne.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'll just wait for a working mic.
All good. Although this is about the councillor appointments, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank all the community members who spend their time, effort and energy to be a part of these committees. We really do value your contributions, and it really helps us in our strategic direction. Personally, as a councillor, hearing the community contributions is one of the most fulfilling parts of the role for me, and I really encourage everyone to continue to do so. I'm looking forward to also joining, or the beginning of, the Arts Advisory Committee. I'm joining RASAC this year. I'm co-chairing youth, and I'll be on the Gender and LGBTQI+ committee. So lots to do, and I'm looking forward to it thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Are there any other further speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen.
Amazing that we have so many.
Councillor Chen, I don't think yours is working. Okay. Councillor Chen, sorry, could you just see if Councillor Connellan's is working? No. Okay. We're just going to pass you a microphone.
Thank you. Just amazing that the Internal Advisory Committee, that is for our residents a chance, and for councils an opportunity to hear from our residents their opinions and perspectives, and contribute to council's strategic direction and decision making. And I just do a little bit count, and I'm very amazed to find that there are 17 internal advisory committees. So imagine that we only have 9 councillors, and there is a lot of responsibility and sharing among us. Apart from the 17 internal advisory committees or panels, we also, council is also a member or associated with 9 external bodies. It range from the affordable housing and regional groups of council, and to transport committees and forum, and also the library committees, just name a few. So 17 plus 9, so altogether 26. For us councillors, we spend a lot of time in terms of preparing and listening and briefing from officers. So a lot of work to be done. So looking forward to work with our fellow councillors and our newly appointed members of the committees in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen. Are there any further speakers? And if so, we will pass the microphone to you. With no further speakers then, I will put item 14.1 to a vote. All those in favour? and that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.2, appointment of authorised officers, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover?
I'd like to move it.
Thank you, councillor. Okay. Councillors, we will just need to raise our voices, please. Yep.
Can you still hear us? Yes. No.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Andrew Cullen, if you can speak loud, do you move them? You move the motion?
Yes, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Conham, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Laura Main, would you like to speak to the motion? Are there any against the motion? Any speakers to the motion? With that, I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.3, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover?
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted, please.
Thank you, Councillor Connellan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Main. Councillor Connellan, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Stephen Main, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillors, would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anybody like to speak to the motion? If that's the case, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.4, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover for the motion?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Do I have a seconder to the motion?
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Connellan. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam.
Councillor Andrew Connellan, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillors, is there anyone against the motion? No. Councillors, are there anyone who'd like to speak to the motion? If that's the case, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Item 15, urgent business. Councillors, there are no items of urgent business this evening. Item 16, councillor reports and question time. Councillors, would anyone like to provide a report or raise a question? Thank you. Councillor Anna Chen, I'm going to have to ask you to speak loud, please, Councillor Anna Chen.
I try my best. And Madam Mayor, I attended the 11th Iranian...
Sorry, Councillor Anna Chen, can I ask you to come to the lectern so that we can hear you, please, on the live stream? Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen.
Wow, that's a very special experience. Thank you. So, Madam Mayor, I attended the 11th Iranian Film Festival's Melbourne opening night recently and was deeply touched by a 15-minute short film called Pharaoh's Tech. The film was about a day in the life of an aging Iranian mother, surrounded by two curly-haired dogs she treated like children, and how she dealt with her loneliness in the face of ever-receding promises by her family members to visit. Loneliness is common among older adults around the world, including Manningham. We all know that keeping socially active and be connected to our community as we age is good for our mental well-being and quality of life. The newly established Healthy Aging Advisory Committee will provide strategic advice to Council regarding the needs of older people, and I look forward to working with the committee members in 2024. But again, I'm very deeply touched by the movie. Only 15 minutes, but it said it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen. Are there any other councillors that would like to give a report or ask a question? Councillor Deirdre Day Monte, if you wouldn't mind going to the lectern. Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Day Monte.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last night, some councillors and I attended a really moving community night. It was called Grit, a celebration of women who become advocates for gender and disability equality. As I said, it was a very moving event with these women sharing real life stories and also a video of women with both hidden and otherwise disabilities sharing their stories of what it's like to go through the community, and also what they want to participate equally in their community and our community. Very simple things like being heard, being patient with them, having well-meaning jobs, having jobs that are paid equally, being safe in their relationships. So it was a community event that straddles 16 days of activism and International Day of People with Disability. Council partnered with Women's Health in the East, who developed the Margins to Mainstream program late in 2020. And in that program, they've been working to empower women with disabilities. These women themselves are then being trained to become disability and gender equality advocates. And it was marvellous to watch how much this program, this Margins to Mainstream program, has meant to these women and really given them the confidence to speak up and to take back their own lives. They talked about we aren't even allowed to even take our own risks, make our own decisions. So to see them empowered and supporting other women was absolutely amazing. So I do encourage all of you to watch the Margins to Mainstream video on YouTube and look at how we can all support and advocate for women with disabilities and help them to be heard and just a functioning part of our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Diamonte. Councillors, are there any other reports or questions? Councillor Laura Maynard, are you able to go to the lectern so I can still... Thank you. I'm too scared to have this microphone moved or touched.
True.
So thank you.
True. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Mayor.
Laura Main.
I'm excited to report the introduction of reverse vending machines in Manningham. So this is where you insert recyclable bottles or cans and then you get 10 cents in return. You can then receive your funds either by a physical receipt or via the app. And then you can spend this at Coles or redeem it as cash. So we will be having 5. There's one installed already at Tom Kelly Reserve. Just last week, we have one being installed at Templestowe Reserve within the next week, and we have ones at Mullenwell Stadium, Petty's Reserve and Warrandyte Reserve, all to come very shortly. We've already had 900 bottles collected this weekend alone, and I really encourage the community to get around it. It's a great opportunity for fundraising for sports clubs, great opportunity for kids to get a bit of pocket money, and just overall great opportunity for recycling. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Main. Councillors, do I have any other reports or questions? Councillor Michelle Kleiner.
Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Mayor.
Kleiner.
It feels like such a long time ago, Remembrance Day. But between our last council meeting and this council meeting, we had the 11th of November, which seems like such a long time ago. And it's wonderful to see that we have 3 amazing RSL clubs in the city of Manningham, Warrandyte, Doncaster, and of course, Templestowe. Very few RSL clubs are like ours and with no pokies. So they rely on membership of locals where they can come and get together and share, but most importantly, come and remember. It's an interesting one because Anzac Day is always a public holiday and thousands, my local one's Templestowe, and by the end of the service there's thousands up the beautiful bank of the reserve. And Remembrance Day isn't a public holiday, but this year it was on a Saturday. And though the crowd was small, I did look and reflect and think, how do we promote that better, that people, you know, when it is on the weekends, that they can perhaps go and share in that short time. But just want to say that we do, lest we forget, we do remember them. So, and it's wonderful that all our councillors were able to attend their local ones. And finally too, it's been the month of Persian excitement. Yes, the film festival, which was absolutely amazing. Such an eye-opening experience for some of us councillors that were able to attend, but also the Persian Fair, which was hosted by Whitehorse, just a little way away. And the importance of that, there's about 22,000 Persians that live in the state of Victoria. 12.5% live in the city of Manningham, so it's quite a congested area, and that's fastly growing into other municipalities. But this is this huge area where, you know, they come and they like to celebrate. So it's absolutely wonderful. I love any form of celebration and festival, anything that shares people's cultural love, and to share that with others. So it's wonderful to see,
Thank you,
done and
Councillor
run by
Michelle
volunteers.
Klein. It's time. Thank you. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of Peter Orwin in recent days. Peter was a legend of the Bulleen Templestowe Cricket and Football Club. He was the 12th player at the cricket club and made the top scorer in the 1970 grand final, which was the first season that the club played in the comp. And he was also the inaugural senior football club coach in their first 2 seasons. He later coached the under-19s. He was a life member of the junior football club, and he was a famous recruiter. And Matthew Agrotis, who's one of the doyens of the club at the moment, was telling me how Peter came to visit him in his house and persuade his parents to come down and play, having seen him play as a little leaguer at the MCG one time. And he was a famous recruiter. And the Bulleen Templestowe Cricket Club and Football Club are famous for their cross-pollination between cricket and football. A group of us were sitting around the table recently and after a veterans game, and it worked out there was more than 1,000 games of cricket and football around that table. And many of them had started in the juniors, and some of them had been recruited by Peter. So the veteran cricketers were all wearing black armbands on Sunday when they played to reflect their respect for Peter, who did more than almost anyone in terms of laying the foundations, building community, getting kids to participate and creating lifelong connections for dozens and dozens of players at the Bulleen Templestowe Cricket Club, the Junior Footy Club and the Senior Footy Club down there at Tedajani Reserve.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillors, are there any other councillor reports or questions? Thank you. If there are no other councillor reports this evening, I then declare the meeting closed.